Let's talk about Foundry and do a quick guide on how to use it if you are a newer player to using Foundry. By the way, Foundry is my favorite virtual tabletop, so if that's what your Dungeon Master is using, they're probably awesome. When you first get in, you're going to see a page that looks a lot like this. They might actually have an image on the background or some sort of world description. None of that really matters. What you'll do is select your user. If you've set a password up with them, then you'll enter your password. Most people just leave it blank. All right, the first time that you log in, you'll see this page, or every time you log in if you just close out of it, which you absolutely can do. But what you should do is click your character and save configuration. You can also kind of set your colors, and then you can see down here, if I had a different name selected, so instead of when I logged in, if instead of my character name, if it had my name, because that's how my Dungeon Master set it up, then it would say like Josh, and then in the brackets, it would have the character name that I have selected. Little tidbit of information. All right, when you first join, the screen might look something like this. You're usually on the chat, and let's talk about these bars up here first. This one is your chat. It may be filled with different attacks and all of that stuff, or you might join and it is blank. Couple tips on this one. Public roll means that you're rolling for everyone to see. So if I make a dagger attack, right, everyone sees this. If I do private to GM, only me and the Dungeon Master get to see it. If I do blind GM roll, then it shows up as question marks for me. Only the Dungeon Master or the Game Master gets to see it, and then a self roll, only I get to see it. So that's a quick breakdown on how the chat works. So the next up is combat encounters. If you are in a combat, if they say to roll initiative, this is where that will happen. Let me go ahead and pull everyone into combat so you can get a glimpse of what that looks like. So the Game Master pulls everyone into combat. They rolled initiative so you can see where they are there, and then you'll just hit that little die right there. Bam, 23. My roll was awesome. And I'm going first. And you can see not started. The Game Master will start it, and round one. You can take your turn, and then at the end of your turn, you can hit this button. The Game Master can also push it along so you can see whose turn it is. Another little pro tip, if you right click any of these, it will pull it out into its own separate window. So then you can go back to the chat and you can see the chat, and on the side, you can see the combat order. Double clicking it will minimize it and open it back up by double clicking it again. All right, next this is where you'll see your, what they call actors or your character, or if you have any companion animals or NPCs or anything else that you have access to, or any other character sheets you have access to, this is where it will show up. You can just click it and it'll pull up your character sheet. This is where you could see items. This is very rarely used because usually the Dungeon Master will just drop items into your inventory. Journal notes, if you get any handouts, this is most likely where they will pop up. Let me see if I can pull any handouts. So on another screen, I just created a handout. So Banner Troll. This pops up on my screen then because the Dungeon Master clicked show to players. If I were to close out of it, I could come back to it on here. That's assuming that the Dungeon Master gave you rights to view it. Sometimes they can show you something, it pops up on your screen, and once you close out of it, it is gone. If you need to see it again, just ask your Dungeon Master. Rollable tables. If you're playing something like a Wild Magic Sorcerer, your Dungeon Master might load a Wild Magic table on here for you to use. Similarly with cards, you can kind of roll for cards, things like that. This is where you can control the music. This is your playlist music. So this is how loud the music and all of that would be. Ambient is, they can set ambient sounds. So like a fire crackling, if you get close enough to it, that's what that would control. And then interface are things like your die rolling, doors opening, stuff like that. Compendium is basically things that aren't pulled into like feats or features or items that are pulled into here. If they're not pulled into here, you can often find them in the compendium. And you actually should be able to click this, and let's say I wanted to add some arrows to my inventory. Yep, arrows just got added right there. Anyway, and you can just drag those over. All right, and then the last thing that you will see are the game settings. You may want to come in here and set some of the settings. If they have more modules going, you can set some of the settings for the modules like the dice rolling or any of that stuff. If you have a slow computer, you could drop your maximum frame rate. I don't think most people will really worry about this too much. I just realized players can set sounds to play when combat begins. Oh. Does that do that every time it gets to your turn? It does do that every time it gets to your turn.
Make ready. Your turn comes.
Ooh.
It's your turn. It is your turn.
Okay, that's pretty cool. So you get the fight commentator. That's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. I didn't realize that. A lot of the time I will just verbally tell people, hey, your turn's up next, so be ready. That might be something really useful so that you know your turn is actually coming up. Wow, learn something new every day. I should make videos like this more often. So you can see all the controls here, adjust some of the key bindings. I'll talk about some of these that you'll need to know a little bit more later on. So now that we have covered all of these little dashboard deals, you can also hit that little arrow to collapse it. Let's talk about what these things over here do and kind of the map. So if you highlight your token, you can obviously use your arrows to click around. You can also drag and drop with your mouse. And you can also hit this button right here. This will target people so that when you do your attack, you have somebody specifically targeted. And I don't think it does anything. It doesn't do anything unless you have certain mods. There are mods where it might require you to target who you're hitting and track the damage that you do to them, all of that. Or you can just tell your Dungeon Master, hey, I'm attacking that person. So that's what this little targeting thing does. This right here measures distance. So you can see if you have 30 feet of movement, I can make it right there. And what I just did was, as I was measuring, I just hit the space bar and it moves my character. If you hold control and click, then you can click and click while just holding control, and then it moves along the path. So I left click, drag, hold control, let go of left click, and then I click where I want to create another point, go, and then you just click for each of the points. And maybe you want to go around a corner or some weird path. And you can see this would be 75 feet of movement. I hit the space bar and it takes off down that path. So that can be pretty useful when you have to measure distance and move your character. This creates measurements on the ground. So if you're casting Fireball, actually Fireball is only 20 feet. I just controlled Z to get that off of there. So that could be a Fireball. When you cast a spell, it may ask if you want to put the measurement icon down. So if I cast Burning Hands, consume spell slot and place measured template. So placing a measured template will then, you can use the scroll wheel to aim it and you can place your template. Then when you click, it'll roll the dice and it'll highlight the squares that are affected by the spell. Now, if you want to be really nice to your Dungeon Master, what you should do is click over here after the spell goes off and he sees who was affected by it, and then delete it. I just hovered over it and hit the delete key. And so you've got the circle, cone, and rectangle template, as well as a line. Control Z will get rid of it if you just placed it. If a Dungeon Master drops a journal note, the bookmark, or not this bookmark, it looks like a bookmark, but I suppose it's supposed to be a banner. If you click that, you can see any journal notes that the Dungeon Master has dropped on the map. All right, so those are most of the basics that you need to know for moving your character around, hitting your buttons. A quick overview of your character sheet before we get into some hotkeys. So you can see your different attributes, inventory, features, spell books, all of that fun stuff with your HP. To roll, you usually just click the word. It'll pop up ability check or saving throw. And you can click your roll. There are certain mods, like I like to use mods that whenever you roll an attack, it does the attack and damage together. By default, though, you'll have to actually click to roll your damage for everything, or roll your attack, all of that stuff. Inventory is where you can see your items or your weapons, and you can make your attacks. Whether it's with advantage, disadvantage, or normal. And again, you can also change who sees it here. Rolling for skills is the exact same process. If you lose health, you can minus 10, and if the Dungeon Master says that you take 10 health. Short rest, you hit the short rest button, you can roll, and you can see I just used 2 hit die for a short rest, or you can long rest, it's a new day, and I got half of my hit dice back. You can hit the settings button and change your AC. You'll usually just leave it to equipped armor, but you might switch it over to mage armor. You might have something weird going on, and you're like, I actually have an AC of 37, and then your Dungeon Master will click on that and go, no you don't, and switch back to equipped. Death saves will show up here as well. Obviously, all of your spells will be under spell book. You can set your spell casting stat, and you can even filter by spells that are actions, bonus actions, reactions, concentration, ritual, and you're prepared. Control, Shift, and Alt are some useful keys to know. When you hit attack, if you don't want this thing to pop up, you can If you don't want all that stuff to pop up, you can control click and that will automatically roll with disadvantage. So you see it said 2d20 keep low. Or you can alt click and it rolls with advantage. And it also says advantage or disadvantage, advantage. Shift click will do your alternate roll. So if you have like a long sword that has a one-handed or two-handed variation, usually shift clicking will do the other one. And you can change those around. I prefer to have shift to be my advantage, control to be disadvantage, and alt to be my alternate roll. But that's just me personally. Anyway, so something else that is useful that you can do is you can take an attack. If that's what you do most of the time, you can drag that down here, and then maybe you use Hunter's Mark a lot and Cure Wounds. You could drag it down to your hotbar. Right up here, you can toggle your navigation and see the map that you're currently on or other maps that are available to you. You may not see any other ones if your Dungeon Master doesn't allow you to see them, but if they do, it'll pop up right here and you can click between ones that are available to you, which are typically things like maps and that sort of thing, and the active scene. If you have any questions or need any help, feel free to drop a comment or add me on Discord and shoot me a message.